In a study carried out by the Department of Health and Queen's University Belfast, around 90% of Year 12 pupils in Northern Ireland are reported to have consumed alcohol at some point in their lives. Furthermore, 50% of those surveys are reported to be regular drinkers. Now, there are many causes of underage drinking. My name is Steve, and this is my story. Now, my name isn't really Steve, and in fact, this isn't even my real voice, but I can tell you that my story is real. For as long as I can remember, I was part of a one-parent family. Despite this, I felt I had a pretty stable upbringing. My mother worked long hours as a nurse, but there was always plenty of support from relatives. She worked hard, and I was always well provided for. When she was at home, she seemed to spend most of her time in bed. I was always just told that it was because she was so tired from all of the work. Eventually, she stopped working altogether, but she still seemed to spend the same amount of time in bed. My relatives would always find some sort of excuse for it, but I began to work it out. My mum was an alcoholic. She would spend time in recovery and on sessions, the latter becoming more frequent as the years went by. By the time I reached my teens, friends of mine were starting to experiment with alcohol. Wanting to fit in, I did the same. It wasn't such a taboo with their families, but in mine it was different. I tried my hardest to hide it. It wasn't for fear of getting in trouble. It was more because I had seen the effect my mother's drinking had had on the family, and yet that still didn't stop me. My mum's health had deteriorated to such an extent that I ended up becoming her main carer, but she still couldn't stop, and unbeknown to me, neither could I. Then one morning I woke up and checked on my mum to make sure she was okay, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. As I entered her room, I saw her lying on the floor with her duvet around her. I called out, "Mum, Mum!" but there was no answer. I gently shook her and called out to her again. Still nothing. I already knew, but I checked anyway to see if she was breathing, and she wasn't. I called 999 on my phone. "Hello, which service do you require?" I don't know if it was shock or adrenaline, but I calmly asked for an ambulance and answered the questions without hesitation. The operator instructed me to perform chest compressions on my own mum. It was the police who arrived first on the scene. I can recall the officer telling me that I was doing a good job. I was exhausted by the time the ambulance crew arrived to take over. A doctor eventually arrived, and after what seemed like an eternity, he emerged, having pronounced my mum dead. When the coroner's report finally arrived, it stated that the cause of death was alcohol poisoning. Now that was my sobering moment, and that's what it took for me to change my habits. If you feel you or someone you know has a problem, you can call the Drug and Alcohol Intervention Service for Young People, or DAISY, on 0800 2545 123, or visit www.ascert.biz. If you think you need help, get it now. Don't wait for your sobering moment.